There's another layer to this that I haven't spoken, because it's less about growth and more about accountability, about the part of me that had to admit that love doesn't just ask you to add things, it asks you to subtract habits that no longer fit. I had to look at where I was still choosing convenience over clarity, comfort over courage, and that kind of honesty doesn't feel noble while you're in it. It feels uncomfortable, necessary, quietly demanding. I started noticing how often I'd postpone decisions that deserved direction, not because I didn't care, but because delay felt safer than commitment. Delay keeps options open. Direction closes doors. And I had to accept that choosing you means being okay with certain doors staying closed, not out of loss, but out of focus. That realization didn't make me feel trapped. It made me feel grounded in a way I hadn't experienced before. I also had to confront something personal, the way I've used independence as a shield, not the healthy kind that keeps you whole, but the kind that avoids reliance altogether. I learned to stand alone so well that I forgot how to stand with someone without bracing for impact. You don't collide with people when you love them, you align with them. That shift took time to internalize. There were moments I wondered if saying nothing was kinder than saying something unfinished, because unfinished truths can create uncertainty, and uncertainty can erode trust. I didn't want you interpreting hesitation where there was intention. I wanted intention to show itself first, consistently, before language ever caught up. I've paid attention to how you navigate your world, how you don't announce your strength, but live from it, how you don't need validation to remain steady. That kind of presence doesn't ask for promises, it observes patterns. And knowing you could see through inconsistency forced me to become consistent without being asked. I've also realized that the secret isn't dramatic. It's not something that shocks or disrupts. It's something that stabilizes. It's the understanding that once you choose someone intentionally, your life stops being a series of reactions and starts becoming a structure. You build around what matters, instead of fitting what matters into whatever's left over. The ring hasn't been waiting for a perfect moment. It's been waiting for congruence, for the moment when my words won't have to compensate for my actions, when what I say won't surprise you because you've already been living in the evidence of it. Some realizations don't hit loud. They settle comment, steady, if that's how this felt. I've stopped negotiating with myself about readiness. Readiness isn't a feeling you wait for, it's a posture you take. It's deciding that the life you want requires participation, not observation. And I'm done observing from a safe distance. What comes next won't be loud. It won't be rushed. It will be steady. And when it arrives, I want you to feel the difference, not because it's impressive, but because it's aligned with the way I've been showing up, day after day. There's still more to say, but it needs its own space. Not because it's heavier, but because it reframes everything before it. There's a moment that keeps replaying in my mind, and it isn't dramatic. It's almost ordinary. We were talking about nothing important, and you laughed the way you do when you're not trying to be anything for anyone. In that moment, it hit me how rare it is to feel calm and connected at the same time. Not excited, not anxious, just settled. That's when I realized I didn't want a future that interrupted that feeling. I wanted one that protected it. I started thinking less about milestones and more about rhythms. How days flow, how disagreements get handled, how silence feels when it's not loaded with avoidance. I asked myself whether I was building a life that could hold another person gently, without asking them to compensate for my blind spots. That question question changed how I moved. I became more deliberate, not slower, clearer. There's a misconception that certainty arrives fully formed. It doesn't. It assembles itself through repetition, through showing up when no one's watching, through choosing restraint over impulse, consistency over intensity. I noticed how my reactions softened, how I didn't feel the urge to defend myself the way I used to. That's not because I cared less. It's because I finally trusted the ground beneath me. I also had to accept that some of my old fears were loud only because I kept listening to them. Once I stopped negotiating with those voices, they lost their authority. Fear can be persuasive when you give it airtime. Silence, intentional silence, starves it. That's the silence I've been practicing. Not distance from you, but distance from the patterns that kept me circling instead of choosing. I don't want you to inherit my unfinished lessons. I want you to meet the version of me that's already integrated what it learned the hard way. That doesn't mean flawless. It means accountable. It means when something feels off, I don't disappear. I stay. I talk. I repair. I don't outsource my growth to patience I didn't earn. The ring, in all its simplicity, represents a life lived in alignment. Not a grand promise shouted into the void, but a quiet agreement with myself to live visibly and responsibly.
Amen.
To let my actions be legible, to let my intentions be readable without needing translation. I've been careful not to turn this into anticipation for you. I don't want you waiting on a reveal. I want you feeling the steadiness that comes from consistency, the sense that nothing is being withheld, only handled with care. There's a difference, and I respect you enough to know it matters. If you felt me become more present, more grounded, less evasive, that's not coincidence. It's practice. It's me choosing to inhabit my life fully instead of hovering near it. It's me deciding that when I offer you something symbolic, it will be backed by behavior that's already in motion. What's left isn't suspense. It's timing with integrity. And when the moment comes, it won't feel like a reveal, it'll feel like recognition. Like something that's been true for a while finally being named. I'm still here, still moving forward, and still choosing care over noise, depth over display. There's something else I had to come to terms with, and it wasn't flattering. I had to admit that part of me liked being admired without being accountable, liked being wanted without being required. That space where affection exists but responsibility hasn't fully arrived yet. It can feel comfortable if you've lived there long enough. Walking out of it means you don't get to be ambiguous anymore, and ambiguity had been my hiding place. If this brought clarity instead of confusion, I'd love to know. I began to understand that love doesn't just reveal who you care about. It reveals